Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the DATEABLE podcast. We are, I don't know, I'm out of words for excited, ecstatic. We are intrigued by this week's episode. Let's just say that. We're intrigued because the question we want to answer is love blind? What do you think, Julie?
Well, what a loaded question, especially after watching season 3 that just wrapped last week. I don't want to give too many spoilers. I know, Yue, you're only 5 in, but I feel like, okay, so Deepti, who we have as the guest today, I feel like she was a legend on Love is Blind.
Yeah.
I mean, I think season 1, Lauren and Cameron were just like that couple. People say my favorite thing about Love is Blind is watching it, but then going to TikTok and watching all people's reactions. Like my partner and I will like lay in bed and watch TikToks, and it's so entertaining. But there's a lot of people that are like, I feel like Love is Blind was solely created for Lauren and Cameron to meet each other because all the couples after have been kind of a train wreck. And I think it's interesting because season 1 there were definitely some love stories that have still persisted. Season 2, not so much. They're all divorced at this point. I'll re-answer this question. I feel like the part about Love is Blind that I think is too much is like getting married, like barely knowing each other, but that actually isn't Love is Blind. Like I think the concept of building an emotional connection and letting that side overtake the physical is actually really healthy, and dedicating that much time to actually forming a connection. Like we talk about in modern dating, we just don't give each other enough time.
I think maybe love is not so much blind, but connection can be built blind. You don't need to see the other person. And the only reason why I know that is because I had a pen pal I was so in love with when I was in junior high. Remember when pen pals were a thing? This came to me because someone started this pen pal chain. So when you get you send you have a list of addresses, which is also kind of creepy. That would never happen today. You have a list of addresses, and then you send a letter to the next person on the address list, and then you become pen pals, and you are supposed to
I
be
did that
friends.
too, yeah.
You did that too, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm wondering, like, how do people get these addresses? Is there a privacy issue
They
here?
just send emails now, probably. It's like not even in snail mail.
And we were all kids at the time. Oh, there's some major privacy issues and safety issues there. But at the time, it was so great, right?
Yeah. So you fell in love with your pen pal. Okay. So granted, you were in junior high.
Junior high.
Had you been told, okay, now I have to marry this person, barely seeing them, how would you
Julie,
feel about
I would have
that?
said yes. I pictured a life with this person. Never saw a picture. Just knew his name. There was no Google at the time. There was nothing. No information about this person other than just our correspondence over snail mail. I would have been like, hell yeah.
I think it's so interesting watching Love is Blind. I know it's a reality TV show, but I do think it captures, the essence of so many daters. And we had our past guest, Dr. Diane. She's very popular on Instagram, and she actually dissects all the Love is Blind characters because she's a therapist. And, I feel like a lot of them, when I'm watching, I'm like, I wish you were listening to Dateable because you're just diving into stuff. I mean, Deepti, I think, in my opinion, was still the standout character, even another season deep, and no pun intended. And, we had been talking about this for a while where we really would, if we were to pick one person from Love is Blind, who would it be? And I remember doing this in our sounding board group and having this topic, and everyone was like, Deepti. And the reason for that is that she sent just such a strong message of, I choose myself. And, we're going to go into Deepti's story fully, but for anyone that's unaware, she was just, at least the way it was portrayed, and I think what she found out more after, was she was, not treated well by who she was with. He was talking a lot of shit about her, saying he wasn't attracted, things that were very hurtful, especially when you think that you're building a connection with someone. And it's
you think
interesting.
you're in love with this person.
Yeah, and like on this season, there was the same dynamic happening with
Yep.
Zainab and Cole. And I'm not going to give too much away for you, Yue, because I'll just say the finale and the reunion, there's some shit that goes down with that.
Oh, no
And
way.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure like we already had like a spoiler in our Facebook group, and probably for most of you that are like diehards, you've already seen it. But for UA's sake, I won't go into it too much.
I'm gonna
But I'll
watch it
just say
tonight.
she did actually, what was interesting, she did put up a post about all the shit that happened. And she made a comment that actually her and Deepti's weddings were only a week apart, even though they aired the season
Whoa.
years later. So she didn't know that the same kind of storyline played out for Deepti. I'll just say it was handled in a very different way. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I think the part about Love is Blind that can be really painful is it sets you up to connect on this emotional level. But we all know that attraction does play in to some degree, right? Or it just becomes platonic. And I think it's really hard when people can't reconcile between the two and it's on TV.
What I loved about Deepti was she caught my attention on the very first episode. Before even the whole shake thing went down, I just looked at my screen and I was so drawn to her because I was thinking, this is a strong, confident woman. But this show just proves even a strong, confident woman can still be blindsided by someone, because when your emotions are involved, you become vulnerable to something like that. And that is okay. I think that's more of the message. It's not like, oh, even a strong ass woman can be tricked by an asshole. No, it's like it's possible, and that is okay. And we can move from that as long as you recognize that you were mistreated. And she was terribly mistreated from what we saw. It's really bad what Shake said about her. And if I had known what my partner said about me, I would be so hurt. But the way she handled it with so much grace and so much empowerment, you're like, yes, Deepti. And that's why we are so happy to have her on our show.
But do you remember, okay, even in real life, this happens. Like, do you remember, I'm not going to say names because I'm not going to out people, but there was a guy that Yue and I knew that was with his girlfriend, and he would talk shit about her all the time. And I'm like, this is terrible. Like, I cannot think of anything worse than your partner behind your back talking about how, like, crazy you are or annoying or how they're not attracted to you, like all of that. It's just so hurtful, and I'm sure she didn't know the extent of it. Are they still together? I don't know, but that was horrible. I remember you and I were like, this is just so bad, stop. Like, you look like an asshole. Like, at the end of the day, you're the one that looks like an asshole.
If you are acquaintances with the girl and you hear her boyfriend talking shit about her, what would you do? Would you tell? Because if I were the girlfriend, I feel like I would want to know, but would I want to know from someone I didn't know very well?
I mean, I didn't feel like we knew her that we knew him more than her, and we barely knew him. He wasn't like a close friend of ours. I would never like go up to her and say something, even though, like in theory, I would want to know, because the best thing you can do is choose yourself, like we're talking about today. But at the same time, like, how do you have that conversation, even with a close friend? I feel like it'd be a really hard conversation.
It's so hard because it'd be so hurtful. It's almost worse than telling someone their partner's cheating on them.
It is. It's like emotional cheating in a way, like not with another person, but just deception and the way that it's going down. I mean, I think choosing yourself, it doesn't have to be so drastic either. Like, I'm thinking back on my life, and I definitely had a choose myself moment, especially in my past relationship. For anyone that's been with us for a bit, over the pandemic, we kind of gave it that, like, we're either doing this or we're not. And I remember I went into that totally different than I had. This was an on-again, off-again relationship that had gone on since 2015. So we dated for like a year in 2015 and then to 16. And then after that, it was kind of a cycle. And it was, I still think highly of him as a person. He wasn't a bad person. He just had a lot going on in his life. And I put him first. Like, I definitely put him first and was like, oh, like, I know this needs to get fixed, but once it does, like, we can be together and happy and all this stuff. But I wasn't thinking about myself and like, hey, like, okay, like, I'm just like at someone's mercy of them fixing things that I have no control of. Like, that isn't really what I want. And I definitely had that moment of, this isn't the relationship I want. This isn't the way I want to be with someone. And ultimately ended it because I got to the point of choosing myself. And I actually think that set me up for my current relationship, because the way I went into dating was just so different. Like, I wasn't thinking about this, like, if the people liked me, or, you know, how do I make it work with someone that's not showing up as much as I am. I was more like, this is what I want, and I'm going to look for someone that also wants that with me. And it just was a huge mindset shift that really changed my dating trajectory.
It's difficult, though, and I have to commend you for being brave enough to do that, because sometimes, you know, you do think, well, the simple things are in order. This person likes me back. I like them. So therefore, let's have a relationship. And if it's like kind of rocky sometimes, maybe that's just a relationship, right? It's very easy to think that way. But when you choose yourself, there's actually a third person in the relationship, and that's you. And you think, okay, do I choose this other person, which is me, or do I choose to be with this partner? And it's a very hard crossroads to be. We're so taught in the society to not be selfish. Selfish is such a terrible negative connotation to it, but I think it's making a comeback, because being selfish means prioritizing yourself so that you can give fully to the people around you. And if you put other people before you and you haven't given to yourself fully, it's not fair to anybody in your life.
Yeah, I mean, throw back to our episode last season we did with Confident Collective podcast with Christina and Rayanne. I think that one was all about this. It was like, how do you put yourself first? But what's the difference of being selfish? And I think we're socialized, especially as women, hetero women, just the way kind of the patriarchy is with a relationship to men. We've been socialized to kind of be like, oh, we'll just like do what you need in a way. And it feels wrong to put ourselves first because of the way relationship dynamics were with gender roles. But that's not the world we live in anymore. And we do need to put ourselves first.
We also have this tendency, a lot of us, we balance multiple people's needs. It's not just catering to one other person. Yeah. And I recently faced this because I'm like trying to rearrange some travel plans, and I'm trying to please everyone that would be affected. And then I sat myself down last night and asked myself, what would you want? What is your ideal travel itinerary? Let's go from there. And it was very refreshing. Deepti was in the back of my mind going, choose yourself. What do you want? What would make you happy? Because I realized if I had tried to please everyone, I actually end up pleasing no one. I would come into this itinerary probably feeling tired or resentful, and then I wouldn't be able to have a good time with the people that I'm on this trip with. So yes, I think first and foremost, ask yourself, what is it that I want right now? And then you can start thinking about other people's needs.
I love that, because that takes it outside of dating into everything. Have you had a time, though, in dating and relationships that you chose yourself that you can recall?
Good question. Yeah, I think saying no. Sometimes just saying no is good. I've had times with, I guess not this current partner, but previous partners who've wanted to go out, and I would want to please them and want to go out, but I'm tired. I don't want to be out. I don't want to be at a club. I don't want to be around sweaty people. And there was one time I was like, actually, no, I'm going to stay in. And it was very freeing for both of us, because he's like, great, now I don't have to like cater to you all night. I can go out, have a good time. You have a good time. Sometimes we also think we're pleasing the other person when we're really not. So nobody gets what they want. you know?
I really like your example because, it doesn't have to be a huge declaration of choosing yourself too. It definitely can.
Yeah.
Deepti example, the example I gave, but I think it can be these micro moments too of choosing yourself. That's super important, even in the healthiest of relationships.
Yeah, it's boundaries. It's boundary setting and knowing what you want and getting clarity around that.
Yeah,
Ooh,
and your worth.
like this.
Knowing your worth.
Yes,
I think
knowing
is
your
the
worth.
end of it. Yeah.
This episode is so juicy. There's so much in it.
I love it.
People will take
love
away.
It.
I'm still thinking about it. I'm still so happy we got to meet Deepti. We're gonna post a screenshot from our interview with her. She is just as confident.
Yes.
Yeah, she is just as confident in person, but in quotes in person, as she was on TV. She's the same person,
but like a quiet confidence. That's what I like about her. It's not like an in your face. And she has a book out called I Choose Myself. So I feel like this is the perfect time to have this conversation. So whether you watch Love is Blind or not, it almost doesn't matter because this topic relates to everyone. And if you did watch Love is Blind, it's kind of that cherry on top. So cool. So announcements this week. Really, we're in the holiday season. The time for giving, which means give us a 5-star review. This really helps us. It helps us get people like Deepti. We're really trying to get to the 1K mark. We're at about 600, almost at 600. So help us get to 600 and then help us get to 1K. We know there are so many more people out there that listen that have not left a review, like way more, like magnified amounts more. We know, no one's like, I'm just gonna write a review. It's either I know I'm annoyed by something or someone's told me a bunch of times, but here we are telling you a bunch of times, and we hope you can give us this favor. And then also it's the time to, it's also the season for giving. So share this with a friend. I'm sure you have a friend out there that either needs to hear this message or can relate to this message to even just see how far they've come. Even if you're out of it, you're out of the thick of choosing yourself and you feel like you've made that progress. I know for me, just hearing it, I'm like, oh my God, it's a reflection of how far I've come. And sometimes we forget how far we've come with dating. We put things in, I'm single, I'm in a relationship, but there's magnitudes between all of it, and every day is growth. So let's celebrate that. Let's send it to a friend and follow us on Instagram so you can see these videos of Deepti at Dateable Podcast.